Yeah, let me pull up my document on egoism real quick.
Sure.
But so egoism is essentially a view in the um, meta-ethical realm, I believe, because it is a prescription. But there's two forms of egoism, right? Um, there's the normative ethical theory, which is the posit that people should act in their own interests. They should act on their self-interest, right? So basically, be selfish. That is the prescription given. And then there's psychological egoism, which is a descriptive claim that individuals act naturally in their own self-interest and they can't do otherwise.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So for a long time, it sort of made sense to me that this was the case, and I couldn't really put into words why. But I was studying something called praxeology a little while ago, and praxeology is a subcategory in Austrian economics that deals with human action. It's basically the study of human action and using logical axioms and their corollaries to try and understand human behavior when they interact in the economy. And so the reason that I thought that this mapped straight on to egoism is because praxeology has a few principles that very, very closely align to egoism. And the first and most foundational axiom of praxeology is that man acts. And and it's very basic. And the reason it's a axiom is because it's undeniable. It can't be otherwise. A man acts means that a man must act. If they act, they must act, and they will always act. Essentially, it's like it's undisputable. Basically, there's no around arguing that it can't be the case that man does not act.
Yeah. If you
Um,
don't act, you're gonna die.
yeah, pretty much, pretty much. I think it's incomplete. I think it's man acts with purpose, and it's tautological. So you can't act without purpose. When you're acting, you have to act with purpose. And this isn't reflexive. This is like whenever you decide to do something, you are doing it because you have a purpose in mind of doing that thing. It's pretty basic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I'm hungry, I need to eat something. I'm gonna act upon that urge, and I'm gonna go eat something.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Um, so I basically I basically got that idea, and then I was like, okay, so I'm gonna try and make an axiom for egoism. And basically, when you're making a logical axiom, I think the reason a logical axiom is correct is because it's irrefutable. It's irrefutable, meaning it can never not be the case. So for the law of identity, A always equals A, and it can never not be the case that A equals A. So when I was
Yep.
pursuing looking for creating a logical axiom for egoism, I just had to create like a tautology that is undeniable and it's always the case. And that axiom is the self does what the self wants,
Yep. I,
right?
can I just bring up a little point here? Something that I often say, even,
Yeah, go
and
for it.
I mean, like I'll go out and I'll help people, even with no promise of reward or anything like that. Like there was one year where I just went and shoveled everybody's driveway on my block for the whole year, right? And when people asked me to pay them, I was like, no, no, don't worry about it. That's not why I'm doing this. The reason that I'm doing this is so I feel better about myself. I feel good about myself, right? So
Damn, you
don't
get
think
it,
that
dude.
yeah, don't think
You
that I'm
get
being
it.
selfless. I am being selfish.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's crazy, dude. You have so many beliefs of mine. It's so crazy. I
Or
think
do
it's
I
because
just
you're.
have ones of yours?
Yeah, true. We're the same. Funny. Um, you. I think it's just because you're introspective, like me. But that's
Probably.
exactly true. It's like if you think about it deeply enough, you cannot. First of all, you do not, and then secondly, you cannot act for things that you do not prefer in the circumstances that you're in. So my justification for this statement, which is the self does what the self wants, is that It's axiomatic and it's logically undeniable with how we understand human behavior. It's tautological because obviously actions are driven by what the self wants, and there's no time. You can't point to me an action that you did that you didn't want, that you did not want to do. You can't. You will
I,
always.
I I agree. I don't think I can because
Yeah,
everything that I've done was something that I want to do. Even even things where I've like risked my life to try to help somebody else out in a dire situation, it was still what I wanted to do.
exactly. And man, I just wish I could tie that into choice. I was working so long to try and create some sort of argument for showing that choice is the reason for life, and that's a different conversation altogether. But it's just it keeps going back to that it keeps going back to choice. Like choice is very very important, and I intuitively know this, but I can't logically prove it, and it sucks. I want to prove it so bad. Um, but yeah, so I have different logical proofs for that statement, and and so now that you agree with that, I've got some logical corollaries that um, let's see if you agree with or not.
Okay.
But the first corollary, sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I just said okay.
Okay, cool. So the first corollary, which means it's a derivative of the logical axiom, or it follows logically, is consequentialism as a direct descent from egoism. If we agree with the logical axiom that the self does what the self wants, um, then we can logically derive that you will always do the thing. It's almost tautological in an extension where it's like you will always do the thing that you desire, and you might notice that because it might sound familiar to you because if an action is chosen because its expected outcome aligns with the self, sorry, if an action is chosen because its expected outcome aligns with the, hold on, let me reword this.
Sure.
I actually have this in premise form, so I'm just going to read it to you.
Okay.
I mean syllogistic form. So premise one is the self always acts to achieve what it values most at the moment, which is basically the logical axiom. And then premise two is what the self values most are the outcomes or consequences of actions.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree.
Okay. And then the next premise, premise three, is an action is chosen because its expected outcome aligns with what the self values most.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Okay, cool. So if you accept all three of those premises, it essentially makes individuals are inherently consequentialist because they act based on the outcomes that they value.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
for me, I'm like a incompatibilist determinist.
Explain that.
I think determinate like every choice that I make is going to be for reasons. And if I was put in the exact same situation at the exact same time with the exact same thoughts and experiences that I've had, I'm just going to make that same choice over and over and over again.
Okay. Yep. No, I agree with you there. Um, because and I think the reason for that is because there's literally like there's so many variables. Like there's almost countless variables that go into creating that scenario. And
Yes.
I think if we get down to it, it even goes past probability because if you think about it, probability is just like a part of math. No, if you accept determinism, like hard determinism, it's because you believe that like the universe is like mathematically mapped out and things happen like because of like all the maths of like the physics and the geometries and the algebras, all these components. Probabilities doesn't fit into math, right? Like there's no probabilities within math. Like if you create a
Um.
so like there's
What like
probabilities.
roulette? because I could do math with roulette, but it is kind of
I,
probability,
I should
right?
state this another way. Let's see. Math is 100% accurate, right? You don't deal with probabilities in math in the way that when you're creating theories and you're doing equations, if you do those theories and equations, they will always be the same answer. They will never be a different answer. And that's what I mean when I say that when probabilities aren't in math. Like you use math to find probabilities in the universe, but there's no probabilities in math itself. When you're doing an equation, you're never going to stumble upon a probability. And that's because math takes into account all of the variables. It takes into account all of the variables, and every single time it will always get the same answer. And that's what I think determinists see. They see that if you take into account all the variables, you will always 100% of the time get the same exact answer if you use the same exact equation.
Okay, yeah. I agree with that. I see what you're saying now.
Okay, yeah. I was just trying to put that into different terms based on what you were saying.
Yeah,
Um, Now, I think a lot of people are going to get upset at this idea specifically. That first of all, I think people are going to hate that like they are egoists. That it's like undeniable that they're egoists. I don't know how they're gonna. They'll probably just justify it by saying like that's not an axiom or whatever. But I don't know how you can argue against it because it's like tautological. But I would be curious if people can find an answer against it. And then I know a lot of people are going to hate being called consequentialists because consequentialism is a road to things that we definitely do not prefer, such as utilitarianism. And I think that there's what I'm explaining here is not an ought, but an is. I'm saying people are this way. So I'm not saying this is how we ought to act. I'm just saying that this is the way people do act. And just because I found these answers, that doesn't mean that I found the answers of what we're supposed to do. Sure, you can. I would say you should align yourself with being an egoist because when you accept yourself, you get one step closer to eudaimonia. You will live healthier and happier because you will have an acceptance of like the truth of who you are. And I think
yeah.
that's important.
It's like what I was kind of talking about before. Like you're trying to bring this unconscious behavior into conscious awareness, so you know it, and this would be
Yes.
something that you just accept.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, trust
And
me,
then
I understand there are gonna be people that don't like what you're saying here. I am
yeah.
not one of them. I understand this. I believe it's the
Yeah.
way.
This is the way.
Yeah,
And
I
then
like I said, the reason I help people isn't because I'm selfless and just want to help people. I'm doing it for selfish reasons, and I try. That's why I say it to people is I'm trying to let them understand that I am doing this for selfish reasons. You need to see that as well. I just
agreed.
consider it a win-win situation.
And I think there's a case to be made there too that if people if people live for themselves, I think there's a strong case to be made there that they will end up being happier. They will end up making the lives of the people around them happier. They will as you said, they will align more closely with their subconscious and their inner self. Like they will be able to align themselves with their true identity. And they all have that self-acceptance. And when they're able to take care of themselves, when they're not like being an altruistic slave to others, when they accept the fact that they're doing things, but they're taking care of themselves first and foremost, and then you help others. That's the key. You have to take care of yourself before you help others. And once you're able to achieve that, I think we'll have a better society because um, I think this shows the importance of individualism that we need to have strong foundations to make up a strong collective, not the other way around. I don't think you can make a strong collective by focusing on the collective. I think you create a strong collective by focusing on the individual because you need to have a powerful foundation on to rest the collective.
Yeah, get out of my head.
Yes, sir.
um, kind of on a side thing. Have you ever heard of the shopping cart moral thing before?
Tell me about it.
Okay, it starts off with this question. Do you put your shopping cart away when you're done?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I've heard this one before. Yes, I do put it away when I'm done.
Yeah, yeah, and like nobody asked you to do this. You know, you're not getting paid to do this. You know, there's even people out there that is their job to go and collect up the shopping carts and stuff, but you still do it anyways.
Yep,
Right? Some people don't, but there are people that do.
that's
And,
true. And sorry,
and
sorry. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Okay,
Well, I was just gonna say, like, and to think a lot of people, a lot of good people, just naturally just do this.
agreed. And I don't know why other people do it, but I think this is why it's such a good case for egoism. I think there's no limits to how good you can be as an egoist. And what I mean by that is that just because I'm an egoist doesn't necessarily mean that I only care about my proximity. It doesn't mean that I just care about like the state of my room or the state of my house. No, it can go further than this. It can go infinitely far from this. You can be an egoist and you can want to put your shopping cart away in the fucking what's it called? Um God damn it, I forget the name of the thing. The thing, what's the thing called?
I don't know which thing you're talking
The
about.
thing you put your shopping
What?
cart in.
I don't know. It's
Eh,
just the shopping cart slot kind of thing.
a
I don't
shopping
know if
cart
it has a
slot.
name.
That's not what it does have a name, dude. It actually has a really stupid name that nobody will ever remember.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Well, we know what you were talking about. That
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But when I do that, what I'm trying to do is make a better community incrementally. Like even if it's just 1 inch further towards a better community, that's what I'm doing when I put the shopping cart away. And I know it's not a big act, but I'm not going super out of my way to do it. And and I think that it's worth the act because if I didn't do it, it wouldn't be worth the action. When I'm doing that, I know that I'm creating a ripple effect. When I put the shopping cart in, the whatever the frick thing is called, the guy who comes outside will like find one less cart that is like abandoned and rolled down the hill. He will find one less cart, and this
Yeah,
will make his day just a little bit better.
yeah,
This
and
will make it so that people see a parking lot that does not have carts everywhere. This will send like a powerful ripple effect through just the shopping center and the community that people are like they're playing a part voluntarily in a system that is going to make the system better. And that I think that gives them hope.
yeah, you're being the example that you want to see in the world, and it's not just the guy that's collecting the shopping carts. You're not just making his life better. Somebody who comes into the parking lot and doesn't have to push the cart out of the way of the parking spot that they want to take. You know, somebody who doesn't have to worry, but somebody's going to bang the shopping cart and run it into their car. Like, there's so many benefits to this that even though you might have done it just for your selfish reasons to feel good about yourself because that's a good thing to do, there's it affects society as a whole.
Exactly. And in a positive way because you're making a better world for you to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's magical. And also I know you already accept this, but I also find that you can extend the axiom of egoism out to determinism as well. You can basically just it's very simple. It's what we've been saying before. Basically, you will always do the thing which you desire most, and because you will always do the thing that you desire most, it is determined that you will always do the thing that you desire most, and that's how you get determinism. Because
Yep.
you can't ever do a thing that you don't desire most.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the we went over them pretty easily, but those are three like massively controversial opinions. Egoism, wait, egoism, consequentialism, and determinism. Those are three massively controversial opinions.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that obviously, as I showed, I think it's logically proven that that's the case, and that's at least better evidence than the moral intuitionists have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just you'll you'll have a very easy time going through this with me because I kind of already see it that way anyway. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna when you come to some other people, as soon as you say like egoism and try telling them that you do things for your own selfish reasons, that you're gonna meet some people that are like, no, I don't.
yeah. No,
That's
I
that
mean, yeah. And dude, it's funny because this all ties back to the thing you initially started our conversation with.
the denial, projection, integration, transmutation thing. Fast mind, slow mind.
Exactly. It
Yep.
goes back to that process because it's a deeper psychological phenomena that happens in people. People just often are closed minded. They can be dogmatic. They get stuck in their ways. They will continue with their indoctrination that they've been indoctrinated to believe since the time they were a child and raised that way. And I can't necessarily blame them, but it's like this is the reason why rationality is so important, so that you can break through the confines of your physical state. You need to break through your emotions, and you have to gain control over your personhood, and reel it in and hold yourself
Bring it into
accountable.
conscious awareness.
Exactly, you have to become conscious of yourself, and you need to make sure that you're making yourself accountable, because that's how you find truth. You have to be reasonable.
Yep. The way I like to say it is like it's very important to understand disorders so you know what to watch out for and not do.
Yeah,
I think we bring more order to our lives not by trying to impose order, but by understanding disorder.
hmm.
It's kind of like you know how science doesn't really prove things, but it does disprove a lot of things. Like it falsifies a ton of stuff. And it's like we're searching for truth, but our method for finding truth is by pointing out what's not true, which almost sounds kind of counterintuitive. If you're trying to find the truth, shouldn't you be just trying to find the truth? But it
Yeah.
seems like a weird way to go about it, but it seems to be very effective.
No, that's true. That's true. And it's funny that you bring that up, because that is the core difference in epistemology between, and you can tell me if you know what these terms mean, foundationalism and coherency.
I I mean, I don't know if I know the exact definitions, but I think intuitively I know what those are.
Yeah, I think you do too. Foundationalism is essentially, it's exactly how it sounds. It's basically it's gaining knowledge through deductive reasoning. It's
Yeah.
it's gaining knowledge through foundations. You're creating a foundation, and you're
Yes.
deductively reasoning using the laws of logic to create sort of a framework from the ground up. And then
It,
coherency is exactly what you think it would be. It's empirical evidence, it's inductive reasoning, it's science. And this is the core difference. I think this is like the core difference of the two factions, right? Is like you have foundationalists, which are people who are attached to reason and logic, and they're attached to finding truth. And then you have the coherentists, which I'm not knocking coherentism, okay? I'm not knocking science, but science will always be um, sub subservient to logic. Science will always
oh,
be subservient to, yes, reason,
for
because
sure,
it
for sure.
because
It's
it's
built on it.
derivative of reason.
The whole falsification thing works on the law of non-contradiction.
Exactly, exactly. Everything rests on the law of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. Everything rests on those laws. And I think lots of people struggle with accepting that. So it's funny. I'm reading up on Austrian economics right now, like I said before, and I was learning about economic business cycles, which is essentially how we get like economic bear markets and bull markets. How we get like like booms, and then we get how do we get recessions, things like this. And one of the viewpoints from a Keynesian perspective is the idea that um, that empirical evidence is superior to logical evidence, and that is like it's such a horrible thing to see that someone is preferring empirical evidence over logical evidence. And I don't even know, like, you either like they're massively ignorant or they just have really bad intentions, because you
Well,
have to accept.
I think the reason that they say that though is because sometimes our biases get in the way of logical evidence, whereas empirical evidence, doing the peer review process and stuff, does kind of cut through that.
Yeah, well, I would agree that empirical evidence is more tangible. Actually, I don't know if I would say that necessarily. We can talk about we can talk about nominalism later. But I think empirical evidence, I think there's just a strong preference towards empirical evidence because I think our society has valued empirical evidence for a very long time. And uh, I don't think they've devalued logic. I think there's just like an overemphasis on like science and empiricism. And they've sort of put logic and deductive reasoning in the background when that should be in the forefront. That should be the first thing people learn about, and then empiricism. But it seems like it's been taking a back seat for, I don't know, like these past few decades or centuries, depending on how we look at it, where empiricism has had a much stronger, um, stronger audience, a stronger push of people to look at. And I think one of the reasons is because empirical evidence is so easy to manipulate. It's so easy to change the outcomes and get what you want, to control for certain variables and then get a specific answer.
Hmm. I don't know if I would like the way that was worded.
All right, tell me what you disagree with.
Just it made it sound like, you know, with empiricism, somebody can have a hypothesis and just prove that hypothesis using empiricism, where that's not really the case. There's been so many times, often, more often than not, a lot of hypotheses in science, like they have a hypothesis, they do an experiment that'll show this to be the case or not through falsification, and it ends up being false. And it just the way you worded it made it sound like they could always make that sound true.
Um, to make it sound better, what I would say is that empirical evidence is um, has more potential of being manipulated rather than deductive evidence.
Hmm.
I mean, right? Because like you can't if you do a math proof and you work out an equation, um, it's very easy to simply recreate that equation and then find the same answer. Because and also if you take the equation that somebody did, you can literally just track all the steps they did through the proof. You can see, oh, how did they get 64? Well, they added 1 plus 3 and then they went over here and then they multiplied this, and you can very easily walk through the steps. But and you know what? I won't say this as rough for the hard sciences, like biology and chemistry, but I think when we start making our way over into social sciences, I think social sciences are a lot more prone to being manipulated because there's um, an incredible amount of factors to account for. There's an incredible amount of variables to account for.
Yeah, and like with a lot of social sciences and a lot of behavior experiments that are going on right now, there is a lot of scandals going on with people were fabricating the data, manipulating the data to make it seem like their hypothesis was correct. The one
Yeah,
lady at Harvard, for example, she was doing a thing that was like all about honesty, and she had this idea that if you put your name after the test instead of before the test, it'll give you a better chance at honesty. And the hilarious, ironic thing about it is she was manipulating the data in her
yeah,
thing about honesty.
exactly, dude. I know. I watched a video on that. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that empirical evidence is prone to being manipulated, because there's there needs to be more accountability in academic science. There just needs to be more accountability, and I
Yeah,
think that's the problem, is because it's so much more complicated. Soft sciences are so much more complicated than hard sciences and logic, that it's hard to tell what's true because you have all the variables interacting. You can't separate the variables like you can in science and biology, right? Like you can, depending on whatever you're doing, like with chemical compounds and such, you can like make sure that they're clean. You can make sure that they're the correct amount and all these things at the very, very micro level. But when we get into social sciences and we get into the macro level, there's, it, I'm not saying that it's not necessarily wrong, but I'm saying it's incomplete in our ability to account for all the information happening. And so we need to be more cautious when we go forward with empirical evidence.